Welcome, everybody, to the Art of Problem Statements, 3 Steps to Start Any L&D Project. This session is sponsored by ELB Learning, and with us today is Scott Provence. Scott is an author and TEDx speaker and learning and development leader whose print and curricula have served millions annually across the world. Scott has worked in both public and private sectors, creating education programs and leading L&D teams from small startups to Google. Scott received an MA in English and an MFA in creative writing from the University of Washington, where he was a Nelson Bentley Fellow. His book on training gamification, Fail to Learn, was a #1 Amazon hot new release. Scott enjoys working with teams at any stage and budget to create measurable and engaging training solutions. So let's please welcome Scott to the session. Scott, if you'd like to start sharing your screen, the floor is all yours.
Hello all. Thanks so much, Mel, for the introduction and for the hosting today. I'm so excited to see such a active group on chat already. Like Mel had mentioned, we are going to do a lot of different interactive activities. I'm also super lo-fi, so I'm a paper and pen kind of guy. There will be some activities that if you're joining the session saying, hey, I've got an L&D project, I want to start, what are my 3 steps to follow? Pull out your pen and paper or your laptop and start getting ready to type. I'm going to take some of those steps in our session here. So this really is, you're going to get as much out of this as you put in. Really encourage everyone to participate as fully as they can. And if you've got questions afterwards, I'm going to do this in the end too. ELBlearning.com. I'm going to put my email there. I know that I get lots of outreach afterwards saying like, hey, can you double click on that last comment or step. So please do reach out to me. I love talking about this if you can't already tell. I'm going to share my screen here and go through some of these slides. Again, I'll have access to all of these things ready for you and always eager to talk more. But yeah, let's dive in. Let's talk about problem statements and the steps that I've slowly realized are essential for me to follow anytime I am designing, building, leading my own project or consulting with a client to help them lead theirs. We're going to walk through a few different things, all the way from how we start to conceptualize a project to how we start to ask questions about it to how we probe and get buy-in from our stakeholders and our subject matter experts on what are the things we need to tackle first. Looks like we've got great comments in the chat here. Like Mel mentioned, if you've got questions or specific learning objectives that you really want to cover, I'm not much of a learning objective slide. I like to dive right into stuff, but please do drop stuff into the chat and Mel and I will be watching like she'd mentioned. All right, I always like grounding us with quotes and stats, and this is a little bit of both from the Brandon Hall group. This probably doesn't come as a surprise to most of you that alignment between the learning and development group or team and the executive C-suite team, the business operations strategy team, is not always completely overlapping. It surprised me when I saw this data set or this data point, though, from Brandon Hall, that it was this stark, that 87% of companies recognize the importance of aligning learning strategy and business strategy, but such a small portion of that large group was actually ready to take action on that. So we know it's important, and yet a small fraction, 13% are saying they're ready to actually take action on aligning that. So why do we have that discrepancy? And that's really what led me to start to create this workshop, which I now lead with all sorts of companies internally as well. So you're kind of getting the crash course version of what I do with a lot of my clients. And we start with this question of like, why does this discrepancy exist? I know this is a bit of an eye chart here with all of these different steps. This actually comes from a great book called Running Training Like a Business. The 2 authors of that book have been consultants in this space for years, and they found when they surveyed their learning and development teams that they worked with, as well as their executive teams, they were getting some very different answers. And they created this diagram they ended up calling the camel diagram, because you have this big hump in the middle. And before I get into what the orange and blue means here, I'll walk you through some of the smaller text here in case you can't see it on the screen. If you're able to squint in, none of this should look very surprising to you. This is kind of a basic ADDIE model, right? Where I'm starting with defining my business needs for a project, and then I'm getting into enabling my actual business strategy. So what are the opportunities? How can I do my front end planning and designing? how do I actually realize and take action on the business need? How do I kind of put a project into an ongoing operational state? And then how do I evaluate it? So again, not rocket science for us, for those of you that are in the industry. And then we've kind of broken out subtasks here. So development planning, delivering a learning event, administration, managing the learning centers, LMSs, those types of things. All right, so that's the workflow that I'm sure many of us are entrenched in right now. I'm kind of curious, and again, we're going to keep the chat window very active here. Any guesses as to what the orange might represent and what the blue might represent? Let's start with the blue. Any guesses of what the blue might represent? And you have no context to go on here, so there's no wrong answers. Oh, the first guess here from Angie, time spent by L&D professionals, blue equals ROI. Oh, interesting. How many people are doing it? Oh, it's priorities. Yeah, good guesses. We got everything from this might be the ROI, this might be the priorities. We got a couple of votes for time spent by L&D, resources spent. Yeah, so first, the blue, where L&D teams are spending their resources. Yeah, time, energy, money, people. We are as an L&D community team, global team here, we are primarily focused in the development planning of the actual event, the obtaining the training programs, the delivering of the event, the administration of the event. This is where we spend the vast majority of our time. Again, yeah, learning teams, time spent in blue, but often business does not participate. Yeah, so now maybe by process of elimination, what do we think the orange might represent now? Yeah, right from David, right off the bat, what leaders are wanting to focus on. Yeah, so, and again, this is actually coming from Van Adelsberg and Trolley's research and their decades of work. They would go out and they would say, where are you spending your time, L&D team, as we jump into our consulting here? And then they would go to the C-suite and say, where do you see your L&D team's value? Where is the thing that you want them to be spending on delivering value to the team? And what was so surprising and, I don't want to say sad in a depressing way, but maybe a call to action for us is the stark discrepancy. So again, if we think about back to that, a lot of companies know that it's important to align, but few are willing to few know how to take action on that. This is a good place to start, recognizing that we're so far off in our L&D world and how that just differs from our executive world. They want us to be establishing links with the business, identifying how we can deploy our strategies, areas where support can be provided. And that's just hard sometimes for L&D to do because maybe we don't have a seat at the right table, or when we want to involve in those conversations and start connecting the dots, it gets a lot harder to. I'm sure there's other challenges you all are running into when you run into those discrepancies, and drop them in the chat if there's a safe space here so you can vent about those here. Again, interesting that there's this little hump here that applied organizational consulting. So kind of in that gap between planning for the event and delivering and administrating the event, we have an alignment around, yeah, we actually do care about your L&D team's observations, awareness, insights gained. Super important. Yeah, from Karen, kind of odd they don't want to administer trainings and design event. Like, what would do they just not care about them? Do they think they magically happen without a team deploying it? Kind of, yeah. A question maybe for Van Adelsberg and Trolley's next book, but yeah, interesting that, and again, maybe not surprising when it feels, especially when I look back at the end of the year and say, how come I'm not getting this recognition for all of this effort that I'm putting into? What is it with my leadership team or stakeholder team that they don't recognize the value of that? Yeah, these are always the first people to get cut, right? Absolutely. And I'm sure we've all had, I can chime in here, the tough stories about that. How do we deal with reductions in forces when it's like, well, we've got all of these resources here that all of a sudden our leadership team is saying, why do we have that big group? So what can we do about this? This is kind of like the depressing kickoff point. We know that this is a problem. What I propose here, and this is again what I've put together after years and years of working on this with myself and then various clients. How do we start to pull these two parts together? And that's really what we're going to be talking about here. I'm going to focus primarily on the first chunk of this, the first steps, if you will. This is not to say that the last steps aren't important. I'm a huge data nerd, and so metrics are very important about how do we measure the efficacy. Different topic for a different time. But let's talk about how we just start out with a project, or when an executive team comes to us and says, what do we need to solve? So we're going to be figuring out the problem in this workshop here. And again, if you've got real life projects, either in development or ones that you're starting to plan out for your 2025 year, this is your chance to actually start working on them. Like come to the table here with a blank slate or your pen and paper and get ready to start working some things out. We're going to go through some of these early steps. But before I do that, let's do a little more interaction. I've got another quote here. This comes from Dwight Eisenhower. And I've left out a couple of words from this very famous quote. No fair looking it up on a separate screen. I want you to actually see if you can fill in the blanks in the right order. Eisenhower says, in preparing for battle, I have always found that blank is useless, but blank is indispensable. And the two words that are missing are planning and a plan. So one of those, and I've got a little poll here that you should see popping up on your screen. Let's chime in with our votes here. Give you a minute or two to figure that out. See where our votes come from. All right, Mel, how are we doing on our voting?
I think we have almost majority. It slowed down. I'm going to stop it and share the results. Here we go.
Let's see. Okay, 30 basically. 70% for, I've always found that plans are useless, or a plan is useless, but planning is indispensable. 30% for the opposite. First time I did this, it was about 55-45. So majority for plans are useless and planning is indispensable, but not a complete runaway here. Drum roll, the results, yes. And I cheated a little bit. I had to kind of keep the word tense the same to throw you off the scent. But yes, Eisenhower said, in preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And it was telling for myself that I first ran across this quote, years ago, and then I kept forgetting. I kept switching them. I was like, which was the useless one again? And I'd have to go back and look it up, and then I'd have to remember it, and then I'd forget, and then I have to go back and look it up again. So I'm right there with that split in the group. I can usually remember this, and then every once in a while I forget and say, shoot, what was the useless one? What was the indispensable one? That should also be telling me something. As someone who really likes delivering, reports, analyses, forecasts. I live and die by my spreadsheet. How do I kind of remind myself that that's not always the most helpful thing that I can be doing? And actually, we're getting some answers already in the chat, but exactly what I wanted to go next is, what is the difference? So let's start with a plan. What is a plan in your mind? Good pros and cons, good and bad. What is it? How would you describe a plan, or some of the adjectives around it, besides useless or besides helpful? Checklist, yeah, list of tasks. Roadmap, concrete, static, structured, due dates, framework. This is like you're speaking my love languages here, right? This is like, I'm the to-do list kind of a guy. I want a structure. Yeah, I love this from Joe. Plan feels nice and controlled. That's the comfort, right? And again, as a consultant, this is great to deliver to the client and go like, here, like you've been struggling for years, and then you brought me in, and I've got this thing for you here. Okay, so that's a plan, right? And we got a lot of these words already. Static, but also maybe inflexible. Shiny library, yes, absolutely. Measurable, focused on a thing. This was my biggest thing, right? Like, look at my pivot table. I have a thing here. This was delivered. I can charge you for it. Also better for simpler environments, right? I'm a terrible cook, and so I if I need a recipe to make cereal, okay, great. I've got a recipe. I can follow this. Pour the milk, pour the cereal. Okay, great. It's very simple, step by step. Very, very easy for us to follow. And then we kind of look back through the chat here with this great list. You can kind of see some of the downsides, right? Rigid, a blueprint, but it's never going to be actually, from Mark, plan itself won't actually be implemented in real time. Yeah, so absolutely. What about planning? What's the pros and cons of planning? Brainstorming, creative. Yeah. Flexible. Oh, we got flexible several times. Process, thought out potentials, broad group of ideas. Oh, too many cooks in the kitchen. Yeah. So when can planning potentially go maybe into a spiral or an eddy, or just kind of swirling for a while? A verb. Oh, yeah, that's a great one. Risk mitigation. Yeah. I think we got a lot of the words here too. So pre-mortems. Oh, pre-mortems are huge. Yeah. So yeah, planning compared to plans are continuous, iterative. I love this difference, right? This is focused on a thing, which usually we can, it's the end of the year. I want my plan. I want to deliver the thing and say I'm done. But planning is focused on people. And again, for better or worse, sometimes the people is the too many cooks in the kitchen approach. But if I'm focusing on the people, we've got like 200 people here in this room. Like we've got this great group that is going to now be dynamically interacting. And this is a complex environment that we're working within right now. We are going to be figuring out stuff together. And that's kind of cool. It's hard because maybe we won't have the concrete pivot table at the end of this hour. But there's obviously a lot of benefit that we're going to be getting besides that. Thank you so much. I think the chat's been amazing. I want to hopefully copy this whole thing because I love everything that's being shared on the screen here. We're going to get even more specific about your worlds now. And if you've got questions as we start to dive into the details now, please do put them in there. But you can hopefully see how we're starting to build up a little bit of a foundation. We got Eisenhower. We got kind of our understanding of plans versus planning. We're starting to make some distinctions between simpler environments and complex environments, things and peoples. And I'm going to now layer the next brick in our foundation here. I think this is maybe the last quote I'm gonna beat you over the head with, but I really like it. It talks a little bit about what we need to do now as we start to synthesize the planning and the plans. And what I like to do to, again, start to align my stakeholders and my L&D teams and to say, okay, I know that we want something concrete. We need something that we can build off of, but we also don't want to get so fixated on the thing. I think about that mousetrap problem, that idea that the mousetrap, often for our L&D teams even, I've got a new LMS, that's the better mousetrap. This is going to solve all our problems. I've got a brand new e-learning authoring tool. This is going to be the thing. I've got AI. Guys, I've got AI. It's going to be the best thing in the world. It's going to solve all the problems. Let's be wary of that concrete fixed thing as the solution. And I love this quote talking about just because you can invent a better mousetrap, and again, in the heyday of AI right now, this is a great application, doesn't necessarily mean anyone needs a mousetrap. So let's make sure that if we were going to land on anything or start on anything concretely, let's start by defining the problem. So rather than jumping into the concrete solution of this is the better mousetrap, what is the real problem we're solving here? I don't need a better mousetrap. I need fewer mice in my house. Okay, what does better even mean? I need a better mousetrap because my current ones are too messy, too ineffective, too obvious. Yeah, great here from the chat, right? Defining need, like a needs assessment. Yeah, how do I define the specific needs? My challenge with needs, like kind of the classic needs assessment, is they still almost try to like jump into like, oh, this is the problem, and here's the solution. Like we're going to jump into that. But I think, yeah, really well done needs assessments really just focus on defining the problem. I told you I'd give you no more quotes, but here's one more. Einstein, this is attributed to Einstein at least. Einstein said, if I was given 1 hour to save the planet, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and then 1 minute resolving it. So let's do the 99% of a needs analysis through our project phase. So what are these steps that were in the subtitle here? How do we kind of use this to kick off our L&D projects? Well, we're going to start with just defining the problem. And again, that need statement, yeah, I think I just saw Christian's post, get a cat, better mousetrap. Yeah, absolutely. Define the problem. So I need fewer mice. That's the thing that I'm really trying to solve here. Once I've defined the problem, and again, I'm avoiding solutions in this first step, just defining the problem. What do I do with this very elegant, clear problem statement that I've defined here? Well, we're going to start to see if we can poke holes in it. And again, good needs assessments this is kind of like a version of a needs assessment, but defining the problem and then asking some questions. So I'm going to get really concrete with my pseudo fixed plan. And then I'm going to immediately blow it up and say like, okay, how can I complexify this? How can I get people involved? How can I recognize that this is not something that can just be simply solved? And then finally, how can I take that list and chart it against what is risky, what is known, what is unknown, what is high versus low risk. All of those things are going to filter back into the questions that I've created and the problem that I've gathered here. So these are the three steps. I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions or observations or comments. Absolutely +1 to Kat solving most of the world's problems. Totally agree. But yeah, Mel, did I miss any questions as we've got this great chat interaction going on? Yeah, logic models from Sarah. Absolutely. This is so cool. All right. So this is your first chance here to get your fingers typing or your pens and papers working. We are actually going into each of these steps in miniature. I know we only got an hour. This is typically something I do over a half day or a full day with an internal team. But let's start by defining the problem. So what do we mean by that, and how can we quickly work with our L&D team and, more importantly, our stakeholders and subject matter experts to define the problem? What would you say for yourself? Anyone that's worked with a problem statement, what are some key elements of a problem statement? Maybe the question here is like, Scott, what's a problem statement? But yeah, define that how you might. Like, what do you think would need to go into a good problem statement? Oh, great question from Ruth Ann. The data from the Van Adelsberg and Trolley book was from a long time ago. Like 20 years. I have actually seen it drift even more probably, but sadly have not seen it come together. Okay, so these are great comments. So what goes in our problem statement? Well, what's changing? What's needed? Who's experiencing the problem? Yep, the who needs to be specific. What humans are and aren't doing. People. So we got a lot about people. What are we measuring in terms of results? Interesting one. Who, what, where, when, what? Yeah, kind of like my key ones. Who's affected? Yeah. I think these are all right. All correct versions and ways that we could kind of get the problem statement flowing. Because problem statements can so quickly spiral into like, I don't even know what this is connected to this other thing is connected to this other thing. I tend to boil this down in my workshops to 3 things, which I think all of you have covered here. Who the audience is, so who are we trying to solve this for? What goal or solution is that audience wanting to reach? And then what obstacle is getting in the way? Which again, you can see like what behaviors need to change, what are the root causes, different ways of saying basically the same thing. What you might see is noticeably absent from this is a solution, right? We do not need to have as part of our problem statement, here is what we are going to do about it. That is specific, that is left off on purpose. We just want to know who's the audience, what are they trying to get to, and what obstacle is getting in the way. Back in my graduate program, I was teaching creative writing. We would call this, anytime we wanted to develop a good character, they need to have a goal, a motivation, and a conflict. So who is this person? Why are they here? What are they trying to get toward? And then what is standing in there? Very basically the same thing. Similar to a learning statement. Yep, as a blank, I need to blank so that I can blank. Yeah, absolutely right. So learner statement, problem statement, this is exactly where we want to start. And actually, to Paula's point, you almost can see in Paula's chat here the framework that you're going to see pop up on the screen right here. I grew up with Mad Libs as a kid, still my favorite thing to do. And Paula set that up almost perfectly. So I use this single sentence Mad Lib statement to start off my projects. And I do it because it's simple, and I do it because this can almost be conveyed with almost in an email. I don't need to get people down and all of my subject matter experts and stakeholders together and explain this. I can say, oh, can you just, before you want to get this on our roadmap, can you just fill this out really quick? Great from Lauren. Yeah, you got that goal, motivation, conflict too, right? Somebody wanted this, but then something got in the way. So therefore, this thing happened. We're not going to get to the so yet for this part, but yeah, exactly. Somebody wanted this, but this got in the way. All right. Hopefully I've done this to death. What I want you to do, for those that are interested, and again, you'll get out as much as you put in. I'll give you a minute or two. See if you can fill out your own sentence, your own little Mad Lib statement here. I like that idea. Yes, from Kathy. Can you switch this problem statement to an opportunity statement so it's not so negative potentially? I think that's a great idea. In fact, I might steal that and swap up our whole terminology here. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'll stop talking. I'm going to give you a minute just to kind of puzzle on this, and ideally write one out for yourself. And I'm going to ask the brave volunteers to put it in the chat just so we can see some differences. I've certainly got plenty, but I don't want to see mine again. I want to see yours. So what are some of the problem statements that you're working with? So take a minute. I'll fade into the background and let you puzzle out your own problem statement. All right, we got one from Kathy over here. So anyone who puts it in, thank you. Thanks for participating. I'm gonna read them out loud as many as I can. Oh man, these are all coming in fast and furious now. This is great. The executive team wants to make better decisions, but have no structure to do so. Yeah, perfect format, right? Who is it? Executive team. What do they want to do? They want to make better decisions, but they've got no structure. Perfect. The solver in me wants to jump in and be like, well, here's what you have to. Well, we're not there yet, Scott. Like we're just trying to see if we can all agree that this is the problem statement. Representatives of an equipment want to sell more of that equipment. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, the chat keeps moving it down. In the textile and shoes industry, but they know little about the advantage of the equipment. Yeah, so representatives want to be able to sell this thing better, but don't have good knowledge about this. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I can't even read all these. They're coming in so fast, but look through these on your own. These are fantastic. Company wants to protect data with two-factor authentication, but employees don't know how to implement that. Very realistic. I've ran into that problem probably in the last couple of months. Yes, absolutely. These are fantastic. Oh, this is great. As a frontline leader, I need to describe the role of these things to ensuring the worker community and the environment are protected from harm. Oh, good one. But like, what's the obstacle then? So yeah, absolutely. Learners need system practice, but there are legal restrictions. These are great. Keep these like. I can tell that these are hopefully the like real world problems that you're dealing with. This is a great starting point. And again, it took us a couple minutes to do this and a little bit of Scott pontificating for a while. This is a perfect place to start. And as you can probably guess, the reason I start this in my consulting conversations is even just by forcing my stakeholders to try to fill in these three blanks, I will often inadvertently trigger a lot of conversation around them. Hey, Scott, we need you to come in and consult because we've got our C-suite wants to launch a Leadership 101 training, but we don't have one. Can ELB Learning do something with that? Oh, yeah, we got something off the shelf. Can we just confirm that was the problem statement? Well, it's actually not our C-suite, it's our recruiting team. They want to fill more leadership roles internally, but no one seems qualified, so we want the leadership training. Oh, okay, well, that's a different problem statement, but okay, so it's recruiting team wants to fill leadership roles, but no one's qualified. Well, it's actually that the mid-level managers want paths to promotion, but there aren't any, and so they're leaving. And so that's why our recruiting team wants it, which is why our C-suite's greenlit the budget. Okay, all makes sense, but you can only pick one of those problem statements. So who is your audience that we're actually wanting to work with? What are they wanting to do? And then what is the obstacle getting in your way? And we can focus on any one of those, but I'm not going to do a project with all three of those on the list there. Oh, okay. Shoot, give us a minute. We'll come back to you next week and we'll have this figured out. Okay. Good. These are great problem statement. And I see from Anthony, will this recording be shared? I believe so. Mel, maybe you can confirm. But yes, anytime I'm recording, you're always going to have access to anything that I said and probably good reason because I'll probably forget what I said. Cool. Any other questions that are coming in that I missed? Yes. Okay. Yes, the recording will be posted. Perfect. Up on the Learner Guild site. Excellent. All right. So thank you for sharing your drafts. Thanks, everyone. Oh, what if the problem statement is too broad? Great question, segueing into our second step. So great question from Guy here. Okay, I've got this single sentence. It is very, very broad. Like I have a group that wants to sell things, but they don't know how. That's huge, Scott. How am I supposed to take that back to my learning team and action it in any way? Well, good thing we asked. Let's go from our first step now to defining the problem, no matter how broad it is. Can we get clarity on our entire group is agreed on the 3 words we want to fill in here? We've shared our first drafts. Hang on to these because we're going to do something with them in a second. But here's our second step. We are now going to take this problem statement that feels very concrete, if broad, and when you look at this and when you look at it with your stakeholder group, it will probably start to raise all sorts of questions. Yeah. Great one from Hilla. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. What if the obstacle is unknown? Let me go back here really quick. I have a learner group that wants more paths to promotion, but they don't know what to do. Yeah, it is okay if your obstacle is, I don't know how to solve this. That is absolutely an okay obstacle, because that's truthful rather than saying like, and AI is going to solve it for whatever. Yes. So let's now go into our second step. So we've got our problem statement. Even if the obstacle is, I have no idea what I'm doing with this. I've defined the person and where they want to go. Now we're going to ask as many questions as possible. We already got some people jumping into this. So from Rebecca, my favorite question, what have you done already to address this? Yes, absolutely. Or what have you tried? Yeah. This is one of my favorites, maybe because I'm like a devil's advocate or a disruptor, but I love asking, well, what's the worst that could happen? You got mid-level managers that are not getting past promotion. What's the worst that could happen? Yeah, all my mid-level managers will leave. Okay, well, then what would happen? Well, then my teams would have not enough. Okay, well, let's like dig into the actual problem here. How long has this been an issue? Who else is aware? Where are we disagreeing? If anyone's run across the 5 why framework, it's that idea that you're going to ask why, and then they'll like give you an answer, and then you ask why to that question or that answer, and then they'll give you another reason, and you ask why, and the whole point is to kind of drill down into that that root cause analysis. Other favorite questions from folks? We've had a couple come up earlier on about talking about metrics. That's a huge one for me at this point. So how do you know this is a problem? What are the metrics here? How are you measuring, the size of that obstacle? Is this a little obstacle? Big? Yeah. From Angie, how big is the problem? How are you measuring? What is big? What counts as big? What is we talked about timeline. Let's see. What would success look like? Yep, absolutely. How does this align with our strategic goals? When we think back to that camel diagram, like this is exactly what we're talking about here. Yeah, like cognitive coaching. Absolutely. Paraphrase and restate until they agree on the definition. Yeah. Yeah, I love how long has this been an issue? Yeah, because it's usually you're realizing like, oh, so something might be triggered from something else. What are the contingency plans? From Callie, what part of the problem can we solve for? What part do we need to ask leadership to solve? And what part is unsolved? Oh, that's a great 3-parter question from Callie here. Very cool. What happens if we don't do anything? One of the best questions too, right? So what's the status quo approach? If I don't do anything to this, yeah, almost kind of like marrying with this, what's the word? Like what's going to happen? Yes, Socratic approach, absolutely. What are the critical dependencies? So we've got an amazing group here, very active on the chat. If someone is willing to repost their problem statement at the bottom of the kind of live on our chat thread right now. If you want to have the group ask questions about your problem statement, let's have someone post in their problem statement into the chat here. We just had a bunch of people posting their version. Anyone who wants to get their problem statement live workshopped, what I want to do is have someone post the problem statement, and then let's all ask some of these questions. And once we have the context of a specific problem statement, you can actually ask some more specific questions. And obviously you don't need to get into like real life details or anything like that. But if anyone wants to live workshop their problem statement, you've got, 200 plus? People here. Saved. Yeah. So I don't know if the chat should be available, but I'm certainly going to be copying it because this is a gold mine, right? Anyone willing to post their problem statement in the bottom here? Oh, is the gap really knowledge or skills? Yes, that is a great. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Albert. Okay, let's use Albert's problem statement here. And again, it's broad on purpose. It's a single sentence. We're not expected to launch a project from this. Let's see how many questions can we ask about Albert's problem statement here. Albert's problem statement is learners need system practice, but there are legal restrictions. So we can ask all of these broad ones, right? Like, what's the worst that could happen? Albert, how long has this been an issue? What else is? And Albert, you don't need to answer any of these questions. We're not in the question answering stage yet. Yeah. Oh, this is great. We've got our brain trust firing here. What are the restrictions? Who are the learners? Like, give us some more definitions on the learner. What are the legal restrictions? What region? How enforceable are they? Which learners? How is the system designed? What is the system? How many restrictions? What type of practice do they need? Hands-on. Oh, yeah. How will you know if the practice is successful? Throwing out more on the top of my head. What legislative body passed the regulations? What are the parameters that we're facing? What is the goal of implementing the system? What do they not know already? Know and not know. If nothing happens, this is huge. So give yourselves a round of applause and a round of applause for your peers. Scrubbed environment teams. This is a huge, smart, meaty, applicable list of questions we generated in, again, 3 minutes for a very specific problem statement. And you'll again notice that we are not moving to solutions yet. We're not even trying to answer all of these, even though Albert could probably come in and answer like, oh, it's X, Y, and Z, and it's this regulatory environment. Yes, we know that we can answer some of these questions, and maybe there's others that we can't. That is not the point of step 2. Step 2 is just asking questions. And you can recognize that we moved from a very concrete, if vague and broad step 1, define the problem, to a very complex planning process of, all right, let me go out and roadshow this a bit. Let me get my stakeholders and my subject matter experts involved and say, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? We practice this in an environment. Hopefully you're seeing, and we're getting some great love in the chat from some helpful questions that others are asking where it's like, oh man, I'm going to fold that right into my needs analysis right now. So we've now defined the problem, and we've got a hugely long list of questions that we've generated. You saw one live generated from Albert. Take this back to your groups. This is, again, when I run this as consultative workshops, this is what we spend a lot of our middle part on, is let's get this list of questions really generated. No questions too big or too small. Don't worry about answering it, or if it even is an answerable type of question. That's not the point of this. Everyone so far so good? Mel, am I missing any questions in the chat? So far, all right.
I saw nope.
We're good.
Just what you were asking them to post.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up because this chat has been fantastic. I do know. I'm not sure, Mel. Do you know if the chat itself is available as part of the recording?
It should be part of the recording, but I'll see that if it's not, we will extract it and post it.
Very cool. Yeah, because this is honestly, this list is fantastic. Okay, so everyone ready to move to step 3? So find the problem, yes. Ask questions, a ton. And step 3 now, we're going to chart risk and uncertainty. This is where we start to get a little more complex, hopefully in a stair-stepped approach. Step 1 made sense, hopefully. Step 2, yeah, it's hard to ask questions, but I want to workshop it a bit and get out there. Now, step 3, remember, it's okay to not know the answer to these questions. We've got a big long list. I can answer some. I probably can't answer others. What I want to be able to do, though, is start thinking about or generating some awareness and agreement with my teams about what that lack of knowledge or my lack of ability to answer a question might cost us. So I've got this list of questions. Some I can just answer in 30 seconds. What kind of learners? Call center folks, the 123 people that we've hired that are in our Detroit office. Okay, great, answerable. Well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Honestly, I don't know. I'm a little stressed out about it, but I don't know how to answer that. What we want to do is we want to think about that list of questions and start charting them. And I'm going to do this. I'll show you how to do this lo-fi. Start charting them in terms of how risky they are and how certain or uncertain we are. So anyone know kind of the definition of risk versus uncertainty? How would you define risk? Any ideas of how you define risk? Impact, maybe? Maybe. Something's at stake. With the guess of an outcome. Impact of the unknown. This is something yucky. Probability times, oh yeah, right. So I think we're kind of revolving around the answer I have here. Not that this is the Webster's or anything, but when I think of risk, I know that there is a range of outcomes and I know what those outcomes might be. Potential consequences. Now, how is that different from uncertainty? Well, good from Paula, hazard times likely of occurrence. Yeah, right. So what's my I need to know the distribution basically. And how is that different from uncertainty? With uncertainty, I do not know what my possible outcomes are. We've got some nerdy definitions here. Yeah, so risk is, I know what the possible outcomes are. I know the distribution. Uncertainty is, I have no idea. And so, again, this might seem like they're synonymous. They're not. It's something that it's very important for us to distinguish between. Do I know the possible outcomes of an answer, or do I not? What's the worst that could happen? I honestly don't know what all the worst potential outcomes could be. So this is an uncertain thing. Uncertainty implies lack of confidence in a positive outcome. Yeah, potentially, yeah. Or even just that I don't even know what I've got here. Yeah, it's a great point from Sharice. Put these statements as something that isn't necessarily negative, but when we see risk and uncertainty, and again, imagine your own C-suite or your stakeholders, they think about, okay, risk and uncertainty is like bad stuff is happening, and so I'm immediately going to go into lockdown mode. Well, this is not, it's not negative necessarily. It's just something to be aware of. I've got a little story problem here, and we'll exercise and practice our discernment and parsing and understanding the difference between certainty and uncertainty with this story problem. All right, so here's my story problem. Imagine you're walking into an empty part of your hometown, and then someone pulls you into an alley, and they say, guess what? It's your lucky day. I'm going to roll this dice, and they hold up a dice. They say, I'm going to roll this, and if it comes up 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, any of those 5 options, I will give you $100. And they show you a $100 bill. But if this dice comes up 6, you're going to owe me $100. What do you want to do? And that's where the story problem ends. So my questions for you: there are elements of low risk, high risk, knowns and unknowns in this scenario. Let's start with the first one. What is low risk in this scenario here? Low risk is walk away. Oh, look at this. This is interesting. So we've got a range of answers. I would say some of these fall into more a question of certainty, uncertainty. Some of them fall into risk. I like, let's see, Crystal's here. I like Crystal's example, and we got from Jennifer as well. Risk, again, risk is I know the probability, right? I suppose you could say that, I have the agency to walk away. So maybe that also you could say is a known possibility. Yeah, now we're starting to come in here. 5 out of 6 chances of winning. There are 5 out of 6 chances. Yeah, probability. So the mathematical probability is a low risk, right? Risk in the sense that I know that this guy showed me the dice. There are 6 sides to it, and he's giving me 5 out of the 6 options. So I know the distribution, and the distribution odds are in my favor. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so now what's high risk? I know the distribution and the odds are not in my favor. This is a really kind of hard question. You have to think creatively around this one. I know the distribution, the odds are not in my favor. Okay, question. So maybe like, well, what if I have $100? Oh, and see, he's in an alley. Yeah, I like Guy's response here. So, and the clue here is, let's say you're in your hometown. So if I know the distribution of my hometown, because I was born and raised here, and I'm in an empty part of the hometown. So so I know the distribution of people. I know this is empty. This is high risk because this is not in my favor if something, sounds sketchy. So something goes wrong. Yeah, absolutely. Dealing with a stranger. Yeah. So that idea of, I know the distribution of human behavior, and this is a weird situation I've found myself in. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You got those spidey senses kind of tingling there. This answer has come up a couple times and I've ignored it already, but what is known now? What do I know for certain in this scenario? You got some people, that someone will win, that we all have trust issues. That's a great answer from Karen, that I'm in an alley with a stranger. What's at stake? Yeah, the kind of the stakes. And I would link this back to several other people have mentioned, where do I evaluate whether or not I have $100 to lose? I would say that's a known quantity. I know whether or not I've got $100 on me right now, and there was a $100 bill here. Yeah, this can't be involved. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I know there are certain things that I know. So low risk, I'll wait to summarize there. I'll summarize now. So what's low risk? I've got a die. I know the probability mathematically is in my favor. What's high risk? Human behavior ranges. This is kind of strange. I'm in an empty part of my hometown. I know the probability or the distribution, and it's not looking good. What's known? The stakes, my agency of whether or not I could walk away. If I have $100 bills in my pocket. Now, what's unknown is probably what triggers everyone else, right? So what's the thing that got your spidey sense tingling right from the start? What are some of the unknowns that we have? Yeah, does this person really have, okay, they showed me $100, but what's wrong with that bill? Why was I picked? What is this guy's intentions? Is he honest? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, is the dice rigged? Yeah, I think we had that from before, but this is the big one, right? My unknown is I don't trust this dice at all. Why am I right? Why did it pull me into an alley versus just come up on the street when there's lots of other people? So the unknown certainly is important here, and our brains kind of jump to this, just like they would in a planning a project. But it's worth kind of separating out some of the things that we know and kind of would chart as a low risk option as well. The reason it's important in my mind when I think about project planning to separate this out is I can start to now design little testable elements to help me move this project into more of a certain state. So these are great chats. I can't even keep up with them. So as a test, if I felt safe and comfortable enough, I might say, you know what? I don't know the distribution of this specific die. Like I see that there are 6 sides, but I'm going to design a test. Let me roll this die 10 times. And if it comes up 6 more than twice, that is my limit. That's my parameter. Then I'm going to walk away from this. If I get an even distribution of rolls, that confirms my low risk priority. I'm going to be in a happy state. So hopefully that makes sense. This is like a little mini story problem to parse out the differences between risk and certainty. Here's how this applies to step 3 of our problem statement activity. This is where we've got our problem statement. We've now got a list of questions. The best thing we can do, and I might try to give you a little bit of time to do this on your own problem statement if you're interested, is chart our questions as almost as little dots on this grid. And here's how I tend to do it. I like write my little questions out, and I do A, B, C, D. I go all the way down to double A's, double B's. I go to my stakeholders and I try to get as many questions as I can. And then as a team, I start to grid these questions in terms of risk and uncertainty. And I get this nice distributed chart that kind of looks like this. Before I show you my own examples, here's how I tend to do my grids. I start on my x-axis, and I just start by asking myself, can I answer this question? So with, I think it was Albert, I can't remember names anymore. The example problem statement we had a lot of questions. Some of those questions were, who are the learners? That's probably something I could answer yes or no to, or answer with a quantifiable answer. There are 100 students in my Detroit office. That is a known thing. So if I can answer a question, I know I'm going to be on this side of the x-axis. If I can answer a question like, is this dice loaded? Is this dice rigged? I don't know. I haven't touched it yet. I haven't felt it. I'm going to put it over in the unknown side. So again, start on your x-axis and start to just grid out your questions on which, where on this axis do I want to place each question. Next, I'm going to now start to think, how do I move up and down in terms of risk? Risk is a little harder to assess. The gut check I do for myself is looking at this question, how nervous does this make me? So can you answer it yes or no? But then how nervous does that answer or lack of an answer make you? Do you know that there's 100 people in your Detroit office? Yes. How nervous does that answer make me? Not at all. This is a low risk known question. I can answer it, and I'm not worried. If it changes, maybe someone leaves and someone gets hired, that doesn't bother me at all. When I'm in that alley looking at this loaded dice, I don't know if it's loaded or not. I get kind of nervous because this whole situation is sketchy and I don't know what's going on. I'm going to move this question up here. Yes, this is gauging on gut reaction, not exactly scientific. You can quantify the y-axis here with historical data analysis, or you can consult experts and kind of get expert opinions. You can do Monte Carlo simulations. There are a lot of different ways you can assess risk. I like my gut check, especially if I'm dealing with like 100 questions and I'm trying to get stakeholders to all get on board with this. Can you answer this yes or no, or with a concrete answer or not? How nervous does this question make you? All right, I'm gonna look up to make sure I'm not getting any questions. Yeah, so for the x-axis is where certainty comes in. Yeah, as in if I'm really uncertain, it goes further to the right. Yes, exactly. So if I can't answer this question, or if I'm kind of vague with my answer, or if I kind of like, well, I think it's typically in this range. Okay, maybe if it's on like a range of answers, but they're pretty concrete range, like maybe I'd be kind of in the middle. If it's really an unknown range, like it's human behavior, man, I can't quantify this. Okay, well, let's stick it over here. Or it's human behavior and everyone for the last 1,000 years has been reacting the same way. It's probably more of a known thing. Here's an example of one that I ran. So problem statement was our IT team wants to reduce the number of tier 2 tickets by 20%. Okay, quantifiable. Audience, they want to do this, but they say our software doesn't triage very well. Can you come in and help like analyze our software? Okay, great. Let's start with the problem statement. Let's now take that problem statement and see what questions it generates from our stakeholders, our IT teams, our end users. Two of these questions, one of the questions is, do I have confidence? Do you have confidence in your ticketing software? Yes. We talked to everyone and yes, we have confidence in the ticketing software. We know that it works, it's reliable. And if we had to switch, we've actually got a really great change management system that can implement software changes. We do it, at least once a quarter. We're not worried. We have confidence. And we know that if we needed to change sometimes, we could make it work. That's great. If everyone's in agreement that this kind of is in this general area, I'm not super worried about it. Here's a high-risk question. Is there a rule for what counts as tier 2? Oh, well, our IT team kind of like gut checks and just assigns arbitrarily tier 2, but also the person who designed the tier 2 system no longer is here. And so we're kind of using a legacy system, but then also our front-end people don't really use that. And so we kind of have to go in and retroactively. Okay, well, I don't think there's a rule for what counts as tier 2. We can't answer that yes or no. And honestly, when I look at this problem statement, if you can't answer that, I get very nervous about trying to solve this problem because you want to reduce the number of tier 2 tickets, but you don't know what counts as tier 2. Okay, that's a high risk question for you. I'm going to pause really quickly and see if this is this charting step, because I know this is the most complex of the 3 steps. See if that if there's any questions on that, or if that's kind of flowing. So far, so good? Good. All right, thumbs up. Got it from folks. So again, this is something that is very tangible. You can be doing this as I'm talking right now. List out your questions and then chart the risk. Yeah, great from that. Yeah, charting risk is so much better than just listing the risk, right? We're not just listing high to low. We actually want to visually see. And I'll show you a picture of this in a minute. I will do this with little sticky notes on folks, and I will have them actively kind of going around and moving. Like, I don't want you to move it all the way across if someone's put it here, but if you think this is a little less known than everyone else, like move that sticky note over a little bit and flag it out to people and say, I don't agree with this placement. I want to move this over to the right. Let's talk about this a little bit. And someone might come in and say, no. I know that we haven't answered that. I have a very clear answer. I spent the last quarter working on it. Okay. This is the planning stage that's the most dynamic and impactful that we have. So doing this step, even though it starts to push the boundary of concrete and tangible into a hopefully a positive way, this is one of the most impactful things that we can do. Now, how does this relate to kicking off an L&D project? Once I have this chart mapped out for my specific problem statements as I'm ready to kick off a project, what quadrant do you think I want to focus on? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to be right up in this area, this high risk, high unknown question. This is where I want to start my potential development work. People usually at this point in the internal workshops are like, well, can we move to training solutions, Scott? Like, if we've been here half a day now, we haven't even talked about learning development yet. Well, maybe. I know that we're chomping at the bit to employ our new LMS software, our e-learning tools or whatever. Let's look at this high risk, high uncertainty questions and figure out what do we need to do to move these into more of a known state and less of a risky state. This is where, and we don't have time to get into all of the kind of agile MVP experimenting, but this is where we can design these little tests like, I'm going to roll this dice 10 times and figure out how many times it comes up 6. Or I'm going to see if we actually can define a tier 2 ticketing support system with any sort of concreteness and get agreement on it. Does that mean that I need to create a whole software training system for our ticketing approach? Maybe. Let's see if we can get all of this stuff out of the way, out of our high risk, high uncertainty, and then see what questions remain, including, do people know how to do this? Okay, and if those are the questions we have, maybe we need to get into that state. And again, to kind of bring us full circle, and then I'll pause for kind of the wrap ups and questions. Who should we involve in the risk discussion? Great question. I would say as many people as possible. I would say the risk is only taking it to your C-suite and saying, okay, I've got my L&D team generated a list of questions, and we just need you to sort these in terms of risks. And I would absolutely involve as many people as you can in both the question, actually, honestly, in all 3 steps. typically when I run these workshops, I'm trying to do this with as broad of a group as possible, because that is where that kind of planning aspect, the rubber meets the road on that. Again, when in trying to attempt to connect these bars and these lines here, this is where these problem statement charting activities can be really impactful. Yeah, and like to Heather's point, so many stakeholders come in just starting from this step. Like, we've decided that this is high risk. You need to attack this, and typically it's like attack it with a silver bullet solution, or just throw an e-learning at it, or AI will solve it. Well, hold on. Let's go back and make sure we're in agreement with the problem. Have listed out a full list of questions, including ones that maybe our frontline staff can think of, or our end user clients. And then let's get in a room, and you can see these little mini examples here. We will actively chart this out and get people moving their Post-it notes around, and figuring out, okay, now let's look at, this is actually pretty good. We don't have anything super high risk, but like, what are these 3 right here? I want to know what those questions are and what we can do to move to de-risk them or to answer them a bit more. If part of that answering is we need to get out there and educate and create job aids or learning material, I'm all for it. But let's make sure that we're in agreement that that's going to move this down the road. Great question from Guy. How do we get buy-in for this process? I would say there's not one specific way. Typically what I like to do is to say, when I'm doing this type of a project or a presentation, I can get to us to this state in half of a day. So if we're willing to invest half of a day of a cross-functional group, doesn't even have to be huge, that typically is something I can get buy-in for. Like, yeah, all right, like we'll give you an hour of our execs time to do something just like we just did. Lower risk, certainly less investment than I need to get everyone off the floor and do a whole 4-hour training that may or may not solve this problem. Okay. Looks like, yeah, we've got just a couple of minutes here. I want to make sure I'm getting other questions answered. Let's see, is a problem statement approach more for larger project initiatives? Not necessarily. I honestly think that using them for even small projects is good, if for no other reason than it just helps get confirmation before we just jump into the road being like, I can solve this with an e-learning, give me 3 days and I'll build something. Well, will that actually solve the problem that the core problem that we're trying to address here? And can I ask a couple extra probing questions that might dig at some root causes here? So I would say, yeah, important for big, small, and everything in between. If I'm crunched on time, how can this be modified? I've got it down. I would say, yeah, what you saw in the last hour is hopefully you're doing this kind of live within your own problem statement. You can do it pretty quick and dirty. I would say the more people you involve and the more cross-functional it can get, the better. But yeah, even if I'm crunched on time, just doing my Mad Lib statement, listing my quick list of questions and saying which of these gets that gut reaction like, ugh, I don't know how to answer this one. That would be huge. The last thing I'll say right before we wrap here is recognize, again, the goal here is planning, not plans. I've done workshops, and this is sped up, but this was like a real group where we actually were moving around our top Post-it note, and as one risk thing moved and became more known, it affected some of these other questions. So recognize that, again, this is not a static process. Getting back to that idea of like how quickly can you condense and get buy-in for it? I would honestly rather do a 1-hour problem statement workshop once a month with my group. Or, again, if this is something I come in and can do, let's run these things really quickly and then see where we're at, design the MVP that moves our high risk question for the month down the list, and then let's get back out and get to work. Yeah, and something you could, yeah, exactly. And we've done this in Miro boards here, in responding to the chat here. Something you can absolutely do asynchronously. Let's jump into a Miro board and move for our Monday morning stand up. Let's look at our board. Let's move your questions around. Let's vote on what's the highest risk thing, and let's get back out there. I hope this was helpful. We're right at time. So trying to answer questions as we go. I'm gonna put my email back into the chat. Again, this is something that I love doing. And so if you're interested about this, want to learn more about it, if there's some sort of resource that you're not able to find on the Learning Guild site, email me. Happy to talk more. Really hope that we keep the conversations going.